Hi, once again. This time it's the third part of the pyramid story. The last time there was a shout answer. I shout at the top of my lungs and hear the echo resonate into the long hall. Almost stifled with sobs, I start back through the tunnel, climbing down from the tall stone and moving in a half-sitting position down the ramp back down. I do not bother to even feel for the statues. Bitterness fills me. I'm angry and unspeakably disappointed. I can feel my facial expression changing, my jaw muscles hardening and clenching, the corners of my mouth pulling downwards as my widened eyes stared stiffly into the total darkness. I need to cry, but I cannot. I long for some release, a comforting arm around my shoulders and refreshing oblivion. Silently crying, I sit down at the end of the ramp, against the wall with the opening into the corridor leading downwards towards the tunnel with furrows. I do not know anymore what to do. I feel completely empty inside. How long I've been sitting like this, I do not know. My sense of time has long since left me. Perhaps I have slept a little, perhaps I've been dreaming. It seems to me that at a certain moment I heard the faint scraping sound of stone against stone right in front of me. I lean forward and ascertain that where the ramp was before, now an open space has appeared, a corridor. How do they do that? Nobody has been here. There are no ropes, levers or turning mechanisms. They are very cunning, these priests. Some even say this pyramid was built by the power of thought, and if they can do that, it would be easy to open and close hidden doors. In this state of complete hopelessness and utter despair, I feel it does not matter what I do. I am neither happy nor surprised that now there is a passage ahead. But as I have no other plans about what to do, I may as well climb into that corridor and see what happens. And this is what I do, apathetic and bone weary. This apathetic calm marked a final phase in the state of mind I entered when I began the ascent through that what we today call the Grand Gallery. When this indifference reached its absolute zero, I opened myself up for a new turn in the pattern of my experience. Numb and subdued, I crawl slowly into the straight corridor. This one is more pleasant than the other passageways because it's horizontal. Hardly bothering to put one leg in front of the other, I let my body crawl in there of its own accord, if it finds that amusing. Far into the corridor, a sudden lowering of the floor level startles me. I have no doubt everything has a meaning inside this pyramid, and that nothing is left to chance. If the floor is not finished, it's because it is not meant to be finished. It's like the details of a dream. If you are in a room where all the walls are nicely painted and have been sewn for many years, while the floor is roughly hewn, you can be sure that something needs to be examined. Perhaps one has built one's life upon a false foundation. The floor in the deep grotto was very unfinished, so onward. The grotto's ceiling was smoothly worked, well, almost, and its unfinished lower surfaces allowed one to crawl all the way up to the ceiling. That is, there was a possibility of rehabilitation, even though I had blundered. The grotto directly under the great hall with the statues had neither a proper ceiling nor a proper floor, meaning, do not believe that you have reached the end of the road. You may rest a while, but your way leads through this grotto That is, through a confrontation with the same forces within yourself which before had led you downwards, deep down under the pyramid and into the blind corridor. This higher level grotto is a symbolic copy of the lower one, a hole in the ground and a possibility of crawling up to the ceiling. I think it's the pleasurable horizontal direction of the corridor which makes me forget time and place while my thoughts churn. I sit down on the floor at right angles to the corridor, folding my arms around my bent legs, chin on my knees. Here, where I sit, the finished floor ends. This must be what has happened. The ceiling continues at the same height, doesn't it? It does not break downwards, or as it should have had when they wanted to indicate a change of level. Downwards, upwards, straight ahead. When I first moved downwards immediately after the entrance, I had also symbolically moved downwards, down toward a situation in which I believed I was going to die, away from the pyramid itself and down into a blind corridor. And it was all because I was afraid of falling short of what was demanded of me. I did not believe in myself, for if I had, I would have listened to my inner voice where the furrows appeared. So it was my refusal, my fear of being who I am, that made me believe I was expected to crawl on ahead. It was that fear of standing alone which has confronted in my dream, which I had confronted in my dream when I rested in the second cavern. The surprise of this discovery causes me to let go of my legs and lift my head from my knees. In the dream, father and mother had gone away, meaning, of course, that they had not really left home, but rather that I now can and must stand on my own 2 feet after having counterbalanced my trip downwards into the blind corridor by climbing all the way up through the shaft. And in the small grotto, a symbolic parallel to the big one further down, the effect of the circumstances that originally caused me to end up in the first grotto was neutralized. The trip upwards compensated for the trip downwards. Clever, clever. It was probably a dream called forth within me by the priests, or perhaps it was the effect of the pyramid's construction working on me. And there are even more symbols in the dream. I thought I would die down there in the cavern, and yet it was by flying upon the lid of the coffin that I had found my way to the truth of the matter. The lid showed me the cause and the release at the same time. The coffin lid with wings on it, death and freedom within the same symbol. Interesting. In my dream, it was my little brother, or was it I? Fundamentally, it really doesn't matter. In the broadest sense, a childhood aspect of myself lost a secure point of reference. So, what about the hall with the statues? It leads upwards, and that is probably supposed to mean towards higher layers of consciousness, a higher vantage point for understanding, or something like that. And like a fool, I just crash up there, while in my thoughts I slap the gods on their thighs. No wonder I was thrown back down again. I sit a long time chuckling to myself. It is so foolish that it is amusing. Then I move on, crawling along the corridor, soon reaching a room that, as far as I can hear, it's uncanny how I become more and more aware of my sense of hearing, is of a rather considerable size. Right next to the entrance is a curiously shaped recess in the wall, and inside this niche stands yet another statue. The niche becomes narrower and narrower towards the top in small steps, forming a pyramidal space. The statue represents Ptah. Touching it, I can feel it must be the god of vital force. Yes, thank you. I need that now. As an answer to my unspoken prayers, I discover with great joy a straw basket in the farthest corner of the room, and inside it, imagine bread, several loaves, and wine, yes, in a sealed pitcher. Of course, I break the seal at once. Weak wine it is, nevertheless, it is food and drink. Someone must care about me, after all. I have gorged myself on the not too dry loaves and the weak wine. I eat slowly and enjoy each morsel by keeping it in my mouth until I have drawn every trace of taste out of it. With my back against the wall, I let myself glide slowly down from a sitting position. Lazily, my legs flop apart while my neck slides down the wall until only my head rests in a vertical position. Yes, that is better. So now, calm and invigorated, I sit up in the meditation position and begin to ponder my situation. It dawns upon me that a fundamental change has taken place in my entire view of this ascent through the pyramid. I begin to comprehend something to which I had paid no attention until now. The pyramid begins to speak to me. I understand its language. I no longer try to follow my ascent or to resist it intellectually or emotionally, but see it instead as from above. I observe my own crawling and therefore intuitively understand that this stone colossus is trying to tell me what this stone colossus is trying to tell me. It speaks in symbols, and everything has a meaning. One cannot calculate its messages. One has to perceive them spontaneously or openly. It was within the horizontal corridor that this new perception first presented itself. The level corridor leading neither upwards nor downwards. I take to mean that I also symbolically had the right to move horizontally, to be, figuratively speaking, who I am, with no self-destructive effort to find out what is expected of me, while I deny myself the ability to judge the situation of my own accord, or, on the contrary, without having to hurry upwards towards eternal knowledge with a haste that contradicts the belief that I cannot live up to expectations. And it was precisely when I followed the level corridor that I found food. Material and spiritual sustenance were waiting at the end of the straight corridor. I found physical strength and a new mental perspective with which to view this situation. So, everyone has the right to be as they are, shortcomings and all. One doesn't have to be specially chosen in order to gain the attention of the gods. So my earlier cry of anguish was answered anyway. One does not have to belong to the initiated in order to be initiated, if I may put it that way. This is the essence of the peace I feel here in this room. I have the right to exist. No one will ask anything of me which I cannot honor. The person I am at any given time is the accepted point of departure in my search for the light and the truth. This room ought to be called the heart chamber. I feel as if beams of warmth are emanating from my heart, not from the physical organ itself, but from somewhere above the skin of my chest. For a long time I sit silently, not thinking, while I enjoy this new warmth, quenching an almost desperate thirst in my mind. A thirst for the feeling of being allowed to be fond of myself in the most basic and pure sense of this concept. Who can achieve anything if they dare not believe in themselves, trusting that if one does one's best, no more can be done? Nobody can do that. You cannot help others if you do not believe that you yourself have the right to exist. Yes, the God of vital force is truly to be found within this room. After sitting in this meditative state for some time, in a calm and relaxed, but also concentrated and vitalizing state, I begin to crawl back towards the entrance of the chamber. Before entering the corridor leading to the great hall with the statues, I once again reach into the dark, groping for the space in the wall to rest my hand gratefully on the statue of Ptah, standing in its niche at the end of the room. I let my hands glide along the sides of the niche, and its structure gives me a feeling of a kind of harmony and well-being. Both freedom and striving are suggested by the shape of this pyramidal structure. And the fact that this niche becomes smaller by steps towards its top does not feel like a narrowing off, but an intensification of space. There is a certain concentrated openness within the construction, which transfers to the sense of touch in my hands and reminds me of the all-revealing acoustics out in the vast hall. But I no longer fear those acoustics, and touching the niche, the walls, creates a longing in me to get out there again. The niche and this whole room cause me to perceive the pyramid as a good friend. When I was about to make my choice of one of the three pyramids, I actually felt that it was as if it knew me and I knew it. I have chosen the right pyramid. I know it. And somehow I also know that I will now find raised the obstacle blocking the passage at the end of the big room. In a calm, decisive state of mind, I begin to crawl back through the corridor. I've gone some distance when I'm startled by a strange phenomenon which becomes clearer and clearer as I approach the end of the corridor. A light is to be seen somewhere ahead. Or is it? Yes, it is, but it is so faint it almost seems something I'm imagining. Or are my eyes all of a sudden seeing more than they used to? I've entered the vast hall again. I rise to my feet and turn to walk up the rather steep ramp between the statues. There is light of some sort. A weak greenish glow behind the statues, silhouetting their pitch-black profiles. But the light is still so dim that it is difficult for me to determine whether it is there at all. As if it is a part of a dream to which you should try to hold on, only to see it slip away through your fingers. If I stay still and keep my eyes wide open but completely relaxed, I can capture the faint light. Slowly and respectfully, I begin to walk up the inclined stone ramp while doing my best to remain in this wide open but relaxed state. It is as if all my thoughts have been blown away. I listen and see with every fiber of my being. If I walk upwards slowly and steadily, I can remain restfully in this state of concentration. But I must not think, now I need only reach the end of this hall and all will be joy forevermore. No, one step at a time. Just concentrate on where you are and the movements you are making right now. Then, sooner or later, you will reach the end of the journey. The black statues speak to me in a way differently than before. I respect them now. They are statues, I know that, but they symbolize realities, representing all that I encounter in the real world, and they are reflections of the real world, images that exist within myself. The statues stand as judges, and at the same time are also that which is being judged. They show me the way into myself, and simultaneously they ask, how am I represented within you? Are there other judges? Are there judges in your mind other than us? Do you allow false judges to judge your soul? Is something other than your own faults allowed to judge you? Do you succumb to other people's ideas about your faults, even if they do not know you? Only two know you. One is yourself, the other is God. We are the precursors of God. We prepare you for the final confrontation with your own self, for the judgment when your own mind will show you yourself, as if you stood in the center of a spherical mirror without any chance of escaping the reflection. But you must also know that the mirror only reflects that which is. It does not reflect your unknowing judgment of yourself, whether this is better or worse than it should be. You must know that in the confrontation with the difference between the one you are and the one you may become, there is only justice to be found. If you break down under the pressure of seeing into yourself, then it is but your own thoughts that judge you. But if you judge yourself in advance without a reason, then the purity of your true self will compensate for your mistrust in yourself. In an almost trance-like state, I walk up the steep ramp. The greenish light intensifies, and it is as if I once again feel the same tight grip around my throat that I felt the first time I went up here. But the grip is not as ruthless and tearing as before, when my fear of the dark plunged me into a totally different mood. Now it is as if the invisible strangling hands around my neck are loosening something. They dig and work as if tearing down black walls or tearing apart an iron chain like those sometimes worn by slaves. I'm torn and shaken, but what is being attacked is a part of me with which I do not identify. There are no physical hands on my neck, no human beings around me, no beings at all, only myself. It is the growing strength within me which is advancing in such a way that the strength becomes greater than the shell that enfolds it. The shell moans, it howls, it shatters like stone-hard mud and falls off. Strong and full of unshakable confidence in myself, I stand at the end of the great hall and look back down between the statues. Deep in the darkness, I can make out the outline of the ascending corridor, and I think about how I might have felt had I arrived here through it. I would not then have known the experience of the shaft leading down toward the chamber deep underground, and then perhaps during my first insecure descent in the dark between the judges, I would have fallen down through the hole and killed myself. Has this happened to someone passing through here before me? Have others lived through what I have experienced during this ascent within the pyramid? I think so. We must all pass the judges. This place must be the central hall of trials, where it will be clearly revealed whether you have the inner resolve to stand up for what you believe about yourself, whether you have the courage to manage the confrontation with your fear, your pride and your doubts. At the top of the ramp where the corridor begins, I climb up on the tall stone that marks the entrance. Deep within myself, I feel two forces struggling. Unexpectedly, this smoldering struggle erupts into conflict. My enormous self-confidence is confronted with an equally enormous, black, impenetrable cloud that matches the strength of my confidence. The cloud exists not around me, but inside me, or perhaps it was let loose when the shell-like physic armor was torn away from my throat. The cloud is silent and smothering. It is a darkness that hearkens for my death, that wordlessly condemns me to absolute non-existence. An idea within myself which contains my own force and which stares at me silently, accusingly. Almost imperceptibly it grows, and I perceive its muteness as a sign of its strength. I watch it grow, I look it straight into the eye. Now I faintly hear its message. It is not violent and evil, but direct and unshakable in its conviction that I do not deserve to live, that it would be better for everyone were I to disappear silently without a trace. What am I doing on this earth anyway? Why do I bother the priests by crawling through the pyramid? They should be sitting down to a hearty meal or be swimming in the lotus pool instead of spending their time on an insignificant creature who by some preposterous disingenuousness of fate is now to be found within a pyramid. Throw yourself down into the darkness. Now, run full speed down this ramp and crush yourself against the wall at the other side of the room. What are you doing here? Have you ever brought joy to another human being? Would they not all rather be without your arrogant ideas about life and the nature of a priest's work? I recognize something in this stream of thoughts. I know it all too well, as if I had already run down to the end of the hall, crushing myself against the wall. Not literally, perhaps, but I recognize the principle. The pit of my inner doubts and the persistent, sucking death urge now seems to swallow me completely. I am trembling, poised as I am now moving along a sharp edge with an abyss to either side of me, or rather, I cannot move at all. For now I sense dark gulfs opening all around me. I'm perched on a surface with room only for my feet, on the pinnacle of a tall, needle-like rock, and if I as much as sway to one side, I will surely lose my balance and fall. But I am firmly determined to remain standing. In the turbulent space around me it storms and whistles, but where I stand all is quiet, as long as I do not move as much as an eyebrow. And here we will end the third part. More to come.